Last week also we was in Mark chapter number 7, and I had intended one message, and it didn't really come out the way I intended it. And Lena asked me this morning because I've been struggling all week. I didn't know where I was going to be going this week, and as of 7:30 this morning, I still didn't know where I was going to be going. And she said, "Well, why don't you just preach what you were going to preach last week?" And I thought, well, I might, and I ain't. Uh, we're going to be in Mark chapter 7 again, but we're going to look at the end of it, and I think I'm going to mention some things that we mentioned last week just as kind of a springboard to go into what we're going to go into. So last week, if you remember, we was talking about uh, the wrong kind of worship. We were talking about worshiping the right God, but worshiping Him in the wrong way. That's what the Pharisees were doing. And we were sharing how that sometimes I think in church today we find ourselves doing the same thing. We might be worshiping the right God, but we don't always worship Him in the right way. And Jesus was very blunt with these Pharisees, and He said that's not acceptable, and you need to stop, basically. In vain, He said, do you worship me? So you're wasting your time, you're wasting your effort if you're going to try to worship me in the wrong way. And so, and that's what we don't want to do here, right? We don't want to come here to church and waste our time. Number one, let's just put it this way. There's a whole lot of stuff that's very, very important riding on us worshiping God the right way. Okay? I'm talking about generations of important things. I'm talking about our children, talking about our friends, our loved ones. We got to get this right, because if we get it wrong, it's going to affect us all. It's going to affect our offspring, and we're going to end up handing down a useless, vain worship system that accomplishes nothing. So, I mean, it's important that we get this right. And the only way we're going to get it right is if we know that we're doing it according to Scripture, right? So that was really what I was pushing toward last week. I know it didn't really come out that way, but this morning I was just thinking about what to talk about, what to share, what was the Lord wanting to put on my heart, and I've been having this issue with my ear, my right ear, for about 2 months. There's probably been 3 or 4 days that it hasn't been clogged up in the last 2 months. I went to the doctor. She'll flush it out. The next morning or 2 or 3 days later, it'll be clogged back up again. She's treating it with different stuff. I guess we'll have to go see an ENT. But anyway, I was frustrated with my ear. And just hey, I'm sure you've all had an experience like that where your ears are kind of clogged up. Does it make it hard to concentrate? Does it make it hard to be engaged in what's going on around you? Or some of us have. I've lost some hearing, and my dad's really lost some hearing, and it makes it hard to interact. Um, if something's going on in the background, it's so distracting you can't even focus on what you're trying to focus on, right? So I've been struggling with this, struggling to concentrate. It gets really annoying if you're in a noisy area and someone's trying to talk to you. It's so distracting. You're trying so hard to focus on what they're saying, and it can be overwhelming, and it can drive you crazy. And it's about to drive me crazy, I think. Huh? Part of it. Part of it. There's other things in my life right now that's. So in Mark chapter number 7, we have the story of this young man who was born deaf. And because of his deafness, he also had a speech impediment. He couldn't speak. And that makes sense, right? Why? Because you don't hear clear, you don't speak clear. Uh, you have a hard time engaging. You have a hard time understanding. And in this time frame, there wasn't a whole lot of knowledge as to why that happened or how to fix it. And a lot of times, these people were shunned. They were put off as mentally ill people, or they were outcast. Like, nobody really wanted to do anything with them. They didn't know how to act around them, and they were kind of just pushed away. Even in the Native Americans, a lot of times people, the children that were born deaf, were treated as monsters. It's always been an issue in cultures, and it was no different in Jesus' day. So this young man had been kind of pushed away. Now, a little bit of background before we get into it. This is in the time period that we shared this last week, at the same time period when Jesus is really keying in on his disciples. He's already pretty much completed his public ministry. He's already done all the many miracles and wonders in the Jewish community in Israel. Now he's kind of stepped out of Israel and he's going into the Gentile world at this point. And he's making a trip around the Sea of Galilee. And this particular incident here happens in, if I say this right, Decapolis. Yeah, Decapolis, verse number 31. Which is like a group of 10 cities, and they're all Syrian. So they're not part of the Roman Empire. They're still under the Roman Empire, but they're kind of separate. But it's all Gentile, right? And right up above here in verses 24, we see the story of this Gentile woman who had come to Jesus because of her child having a demon. And then, she makes the analogy that even the dogs get the crumbs from the children's table. And Jesus was just talking about her good faith. So we are in the Gentile area, and Jesus is really training his disciples at this point. He's keying on training them. Why? Because they're going to be the apostles that have to preach this gospel of Jesus Christ to the whole world. And so he's really trying to key in and train them to get ready for this job, because he's getting ready to exit. And so let's go into our text, Mark chapter 7, verse number 31. Let's stop. Let's go to Matthew chapter 15, because Matthew 15 is a parallel account to some degree, but I want to read it first because it's going to give us a better idea of what's going on. Matthew 15, verse number 29. We'll read 3 verses here. So this is the same thing going on, but it's Matthew's account, not Mark's account. So Matthew 15:29, and departing from there, Jesus went along by the Sea of Galilee, and having gone up on the mountain, he was sitting there. And large crowds came to him, bringing with them those who were lame, crippled, blind, mute, and many others, and they laid them down at his feet, and he healed them. So the crowd marveled as they saw the mute speaking, the crippled restored, and the lame walking, and the blind seeing, and they glorified the God of Israel. Now, right there, I want to share something right there real quick. So Jesus has now entered into this Gentile area. This area that has all of these false gods. They've got Zeus, they've got Aphrodite, they got Balaam, they got all these gods, right? But they've heard about this Jesus. As a matter of fact, there's been some of the Gentiles that kind of came up into Jerusalem and Israel and had seen this Jesus do some of this stuff firsthand. And they went back home and told them down there in that city what they saw. And so now they hear that this man that they've been hearing about, Jesus, is coming to them. And so they bring all of their sick out to Jesus and put him at his feet. And then if you notice in verse number, the last verse we read there, it talks about how that they were amazed by this God of Israel. There was some preparation taking place right there. It just amazes me how Jesus, everything he done, just kind of ties in and comes full circle. Because what's going to happen after his crucifixion and after his resurrection? There's going to be a church that's being birthed, and it's going to be birthed on what? On the truth of who Jesus Christ is. He was the Son of God, and he done this wonderful thing for us and made this great sacrifice for us. But these people who were going to hear about this, they needed to have some relevance. And so Jesus went ahead of time and done this mighty wonderful thing in their presence, so that when the time came for them to hear about the gospel of Jesus Christ, they would have something to relate to. Ain't that amazing? That just amazes me. So anyway, that's going on, and then Mark records this part of the story. And I want to focus in on it just a little bit. So Mark chapter 7, verse number 31. And again, he went out from the region of Tyre and came through Sidon to the Sea of Galilee within the region of the Decapolis. And they brought to him one who was deaf and spoke with difficulty, and they pleaded with him to lay his hand on him. Now, this was something else that was always amazing with Jesus. You see, what did the law teach? The law taught not to contaminate yourself, especially if you were going to be going about priestly duties. But what would Jesus always do? He got touchy, didn't he? Someone came to him with leprosy, he'd touch him. Somebody came to him with whatever, he engaged with them. He got personal with them. He would touch them. He would lay his hands on them. Over and over and over, Jesus laid his hands on these sick, defiled people. And so they pleaded with him to lay his hand on him. That's what they had seen him do. These witnesses who came back had seen that when Jesus healed, he laid his hands on them. And so they were asking Jesus, lay your hands on these. And Jesus took him aside from the crowd. What crowd? The crowd we read about in Matthew. This crowd of sick people who needed something. But there was something different about this man, because Jesus took his time and took him away. Ain't that neat? Now, now listen. So, and Jesus took him aside from the crowd by himself. Now, watch what he does. And put his fingers into his ears. Now, I've read this story so many times, but it never stood out to me. Jesus recognized the need. And he showed this young man that he understood his need. You see, this young man had been treated badly his whole life because he was deaf and dumb. He had been kicked out. And nobody understood what was wrong with him. They didn't know he couldn't hear. They just knew that there was something weird about him. They just knew there was something wrong with him, and they just thought, well, he ain't got it all. His elevator don't go all the way to the top. He's got this mental issue going on. He just didn't develop right. He just ain't up to par. That's all they knew. But Jesus let him know, I understand. I see your need. He touched his ear. He couldn't tell him what was going on. The young man had no idea. Jesus couldn't say anything. He couldn't hear him. But he wanted the young man to understand that he knew. And so he touched his ear. And then, after spitting, he touched his tongue. Okay, so you got a hearing problem. You got a speech problem. And then looking up to heaven. I see your problem. And the solution's going to come from here. You see, they understood that the gods lived in the heavens. Jesus is telling this young man a story right here. Jesus is sharing with this young man what's going on. You have a problem. I understand your problem, and your help is going to come from above. And looking up to heaven with a sigh. What's a sigh a sign of? Is it not compassion? That was something this young man would understand, a gesture, right? He understood the compassion that was coming out. And he said to him, Ephphatha, that is, to be opened. And his ears were opened, and the impediment of his tongue was removed, and he began speaking plainly. So, right off the bat, he's never heard. He's never been able to really speak. But when Jesus heals him, it's a complete, full healing. There wasn't no rehab he had to go through. There wasn't no training or learning how to talk he had to go through. He began to speak plainly. And then he does this. And he gave them orders not to tell anyone. Now, that's something that we've read several times. That was a common thing when he would do this miracle. He'd say, but don't go tell anyone. Now, there were a few instances where he would say, go show yourself to the priest. And what does he say at the Great Commission? Go ye therefore into all the world and preach the gospel unto every creature. So why is he telling these people, don't go tell anybody? Number one, that's an impossible thing. I mean, let's just be honest. Let's just be honest. If this happened to you, would you be able to not tell anybody? I don't think I could. But Jesus he still got his point across. And this was his point, I think. Because he said, don't tell anyone. It's because you don't have the whole story yet. There's more to the gospel message than I'm the healer. There's more to the gospel message than I'm a miracle worker. There's got to be a crucifixion. There's got to be a resurrection. That's the whole story. So don't go out telling what you know right now. We got to wait till the whole story's done. It's good, ain't it? Rightly did Isaiah prophesy of you, hypocrites, as it is written, this people honors me with their lips, but their heart is far away from me. But in vain do they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commands of men. Leaving the commandment of God, you hold to the tradition of men. You are good at setting aside commandments of God in order to keep your traditions. There's more to the gospel than what people are telling today. We've got part of the story right. Jesus is love. Jesus does have compassion. Jesus is a miracle worker. Jesus can set you free. But there's more to it than what you're hearing in the pulpits today. You know, back in Isaiah, I love Isaiah. Isaiah is a book that is just, it covers the whole Bible almost. Some preachers have called it the fifth gospel. It covers the whole Bible. And in Isaiah chapter 53, I think. Let me make sure. No, Isaiah 35. So in Isaiah, all the way up through chapter 34, Isaiah, I've shared this before, it's kind of like judgment, condemnation on evilness. And then in about chapter 35, it starts switching over into redemption and the joy of the redeemed. And I want to read some verses out of Isaiah 35. Let's just start in verse 1. The wilderness and the desert will be delighted, and the Arabah will rejoice and flourish like the crocus. It will flourish profusely and rejoice with rejoicing and shout of joy. The glory of Lebanon will be given to it, the majesty of Carmel and Sharon. They will see the glory of Yahweh, the majesty of our God. And then listen to these verses right here. Strengthen limp hands and give courage to the knees of the stumbling. Say to those with an anxious heart, be strong, fear not. Behold, your God will come with vengeance. The recompense of God will come, but he will save you. Then the eyes of the blind will be opened. The ears of the deaf will be unstopped. Then the lame will leap like a deer, and the tongue of the mute will shout for joy. For waters will break forth in the wilderness and streams in the Arabah. And it goes on to talk about the land. And then down in verse number 8, and a roadway will be there, a highway, and it will be called the highway of holiness. The unclean will not pass by on it, but it will be for him who walks in that way. And ignorant fools will not wander on it. No lion will be there. What's Satan? Like a roaring lion? No lion will be there, nor will any vicious beast go up on it. There will not be found there, but the redeemed will walk there. And the ransomed of Yahweh will return and come with joyful shouting to Zion. Now this is talking about the final return of Jesus Christ. Okay? But did you see the similarities of what happens when Jesus Christ shows up? And the ears are opened and the blind are made to see. I'm so thankful that there was a day when my blinded eyes were opened and my spiritual ears were made to hear. I tell you what, as I get older, I see things changing in my body. I see things change in the way I think. I see things change in my emotion. I see there's a progress of things that happen through life. I see that now. And one thing that concerns me is this. the older I get, the harder sometimes it becomes to comprehend new things. I struggle with my phone. I just got Snapchat turned on. Abby sent me a, a picture, and I had to download Snapchat to look at it, and so I got it. And then yesterday I was trying to spend some time with my grandbaby, and I wanted to send some videos, but I had no idea how to get. So I sent it a bunch of pictures, and then finally I saw the little video camera. I'm like, oh, there it is, and I pushed that, and then we did a video. Couldn't figure it out there for a while. Young people, they catch up on stuff like that, right? And I remember when I was younger, I would amaze my mom and dad by the video games and when the computers first started coming out, and you know, I was catching on to it quickly, and now I see that I don't catch on to things as quick as I used to. And you know, it's dangerous for me to have deaf ears toward the Lord when I'm in my 20s and when I'm in my 30s. But if I continue to turn a deaf ear, then when I'm in my 60s and my 70s, I'm not going to catch on to stuff, am I? It's dangerous to turn a deaf ear toward the things of the Lord. My mind's not going to accept it as quickly. I'm not going to understand it as quickly. We need to be about, this is all where I almost went this morning. It's all kind of coming in together. And I know I'm kind of bouncing around a little bit, but I almost went here this morning. Paul was writing, I think it was to the Philippians, and he said, always abounding in the work of the Lord, for as much as you know that your labor is not in vain in the Lord. We need to be busy about the Father's business, about the kingdom. We need to be reaching these people who have blinded eyes and deaf ears. And we need to be bringing them to this person who has the answer and the cure, who has the compassion. And we need to be sharing with them the whole story of Jesus Christ. And we need to be worshiping him correctly, the way he should be worshiped. And it's all has to be according to the whole Scripture. We have got to learn the right way. I'm telling you, people, I've seen it for too long in my life. I've seen too many families going to church on Sunday, trying to teach their children in Sunday school. I've seen it happen over and over and over. And you look around today, and where's the children? Why? Why? What are we missing? What's not happening right? Now, I know that there comes a time in an individual's life when he's no longer under the umbrella of mom and dad, and or she, whoever, and they make their own decisions. I know that. They make their own decisions. And I can't take on the blame for the decisions that my adult children make. I'm not trying to say that. But what I am saying is this. There was an influencing time. And the fallout is too great, percentage-wise, for this to be a weird thing. What I'm saying is this. The church is missing something. The people who make up the church are missing something. There's a struggle going on, and we're losing it. And I think a lot of it has to do with what Jesus said. This people honors me with their lips, but their heart is far away from me. And in vain do they come to church on Sunday and sing their songs and pay their tithes. because their heart's far from me. What was Jesus' words to the woman at the well? There's going to be coming a day when true worshipers will worship not on this mountain, not in that church, but in spirit and in truth. We've done some in-depth study about worship. And I'm telling you, until our worship leaves this church and goes into our homes, in vain we do anything we do in here. It's a waste of time. In vain we're trying to raise our children unto the Lord. If my priority at home is not God, if my priority to my family is not teaching them about God, if my life, living my life, if my priority is not about serving my God, if my home is not a sanctuary, a place of refuge from the world, but is simply another place of the world who invites into it worldliness and enjoys the wickedness of the world in my own home, what do I expect my children to turn out to be? They're going to be worldly is what they're going to be, because that's what I'm teaching them. I might teach them one thing on Sunday morning, but I'm teaching them something else Monday through Saturday. I don't know how I got there from where I started, but that's where we're at now, and that's where we're going to end up, I think. Be opened was what Jesus said to the ears of that young man. Ephphatha. I wish I could say Ephphatha to the church today, and its spiritually deaf ears can be opened to the truth of what we've become. A bunch of vain worshipers who's having no effect, or the wrong effect. I can't say no effect. We're having the wrong effect. We're not having the desired effect. We're not sharing the whole gospel of Jesus Christ, even with their own children, because they're not seeing it in our lives. You see, as you shared at the very beginning, Chris, if I'm a new creature, I'm a new person, there's a change. I don't do what I used to do. I don't have the same old nature. I have a new nature, a new set of desires, a new set of want-tos, and I do things that I didn't used to do, and I don't do the things I used to do, right? What if that's not happening in my home? What if that's not what my children are seeing in me? What if what they're seeing in me is I want the same thing the neighbor down the road wants? What if what they're seeing in me is I'm chasing the same dollar every other person's chasing? What if what they're seeing in me is I'm all fretting about paying the bills? What if what they see in me is all I want is this new vehicle? Or all I want to do is sit on the couch and watch my TV shows? What if that's what they're seeing? Is that a new creature? No, it's not. No, it's not. Give me a song.
Your sermon made me think of a song I wrote that I haven't finished yet, and they have to hand it off to Dakota. But the chorus part I had, it says, it seems we all see through the eyes of a blind man. It seems we all walk on the legs of the lamb. We all hear God's words through the ears of a deaf man. If Jesus called on you, could he call you by name?
Wow. That's good, man. You need to finish that one. Levi was shared that in Sunday school this morning, same situation. In China, the church has to hide to meet. And when they do to get together, they don't just do it for an hour, they do it for days. Can you imagine trying to have a church in America today that was the program? Okay, I want you to get on this uncomfortable bus or train and travel for 8-10 hours to this meeting place because the government isn't really aware of this place yet. So we're all going to meet there on this date. And hopefully we don't have any traitors amongst us who's going to tell on us. And then we're going to be there from the 1st through the 4th. So come prepared to stay for a while. Can you imagine advertising that on Facebook? And how many people do you think is going to get on the bus? But they, over there, think it's a privilege to be able to get on that bus. Because they've never heard this story before, because it wasn't allowed. We're spoiled. And all through history, you'll see this repeated. The church is persecuted. The church grows. The church comes into plenty. The church shrinks, becomes ineffective. That's human nature. That's what we do. But it's a choice we have. We can choose. We can choose to be revived. We can choose to start whatever I have left. I can choose to spend it abundantly working, devoting to the Lord, making a difference in my family, in my friends, in my community. I might not have but one day left, as Dakota was talking about earlier. Do I want to go on vacation, or do I want to spend it wisely? That's all any of us have. You know, I'm going to share this, and then I'm going to be done. There's been a couple deaths in my community in the last month. Shocking, surprising deaths. And there's been people in my community who've been sick for a long, long time that we've been expecting to hear them passed away any day. Wouldn't have been surprised at all. One that passed recently was one I consider a good friend, and it really shocked me this past week. We don't know what we have left. You know, we look around and we see age groups and we think, well, you know, their time's almost up. My time might be up tomorrow. Levi, you could die on your way home. That's just the truth of life. We don't know what we have left, but what we do have is right now. And we have a choice on what we do with it. Make the right choice.